Also, a stunning report out of the United States, a new investigation about the U.S. war in Afghanistan, saying officials have misled the American public about the true costs for a long, long time. More than 2,000 pages of documents obtained by the Washington Post outlining a failed strategy and subsequent efforts to sway public opinion. The interviews are part of a lessons learned project that was conducted by U.S. government agencies. John Spoko, who led the investigation, saying the documents show, quote, the American public have been consistently lied to along the way. Craig Whitlock is my guest, lead investigative reporter for the Washington Post. Craig, great to have you on today about this story.
Thanks very much.
So what are we talking about here now? Walk us through it if you can.
So we got our hands, after a 3-year legal battle, we got our hands on 2,000 pages of documents of interviews. These are transcripts, notes, audio recordings with more than 400 people who played a key role in the war. This is from commanding generals to diplomats to soldiers in the field or aid workers, including some Canadians. And these people were all interviewed for a project called Lessons Learned. In other words, what mistakes were made during the war. And they, frankly, all unburdened themselves quite a bit. They were very blunt in their criticism of what has gone wrong during 18 years in Afghanistan. Frankly, most of them never thought their names would be made public or that these documents would be made public. But the Post felt that these are public records and that the public deserves to know what these people really felt about how the war was conducted.
It's interesting, too. You know, you think about this war that began 18 years ago, and as part of this investigation, and there's so much to go through, but there's one 3-star general who says, you know, the United States, Craig, was devoid of a fundamental understanding of Afghanistan, which is a pretty damning thing to sort of admit.
Not just that, he was what they called the Afghan war czar in the White House for both Bush and Obama. So for him to say something like that is pretty striking. But again, he wasn't the only one. There were many others who said, we didn't have an understanding of Afghanistan. We didn't have a strategy that made any sense. Many of them even said we didn't know who the enemy was. And when you read those kind of comments from people who were in charge of the war in some fashion or another, it kind of makes your jaw drop.
I'm also curious, what do you think the reaction is going to be now? I mean, if any, you know, from the Pentagon and the White House and the State Department and the list goes on.
Well, I think the Pentagon and State Department have been pretty quiet. I don't think they're too eager to own up to a lot of this. Again, you have to look, though, that these are documents that stretch back these interviews for people who served in Afghanistan from anywhere from 2001 to 2018. So it's a long war. Nobody's been responsible for the whole thing. In the United States, we've had 3 presidential administrations trying to fight this war, and they're all responsible to varying degrees. But there's no one person or agency that can take ownership. Now, right now, the Trump administration is trying to negotiate a deal with the Taliban to try and withdraw U.S. forces. We'll see where that goes. But this is the kind of thing that I think has certainly brought new attention, fresh attention to the public here in Washington and the United States to the conduct of the war.
Yeah, you raised such a great point. So let me end off with this question. You know, the notion that this president has talked about never-ending wars. The Afghan war has gone on, as I mentioned, you know, for 18 years, and it continues. There are still thousands of troops there. Does this move the needle at all in either direction, some of these revelations you've covered?
Well, I think it would certainly confirm some of Trump's inclinations that he has said he wants to end the war. At the same time, as with a lot of things with President Trump, he says contradictory things. He actually has sent more troops there since he took over from President Obama. And the air bombing campaign has escalated tremendously since Obama left office. Most people don't realize that. So on one hand, Trump says he wants to pull out. On the other hand, he's escalated the war the last few years. So we'll see what happens.
Craig Whitlock, lead investigative reporter for the Washington Post in this story. Craig, wonderful to have you on. We salute the work you've done.
Thanks very much.